Hello, I'm Linda Means. We have a show today about a fascinating program that has begun at the Dover Church in Dover under the leadership of Pastor Max Olmsted. Two men today who are with me, Jim McDonnell and Barry Fougere, have made several trips to Haiti, where we have undertaken a mission to fund a clinic and do some other fascinating work, which they are going to tell you about. Barry and Jim, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks
Good
for
to see
having
you, and I know our audience will really be interested in everything you have to say. Tell me about this program. How did it begin? Let's start at the very beginning.
Well, if you want to start at the very beginning, it goes back about 35 years.
Really?
When St. Boniface first started, and my dad actually got involved in it through his church in Canton. They started with a group in Quincy, and St. Boniface Church, which thus the name St. Boniface Haiti Foundation, was the group we're working with. I got involved then. He had brought me down, and I spent 2 weeks down in Haiti and learned about the hospital. It's in a little village called Fond du Blanc, which is in the southern peninsula, very, very rural, one of the poorest areas in Haiti. And they just started a church and just started a building of a hospital there. So I got involved then, and I kind of drifted away from it as I was in my 20s and exploring life. But as I got back involved here in Dover with the Dover Church, we started asking about what could we do as an organization to try to help people. And the Haitian earthquake had just happened at the time we got together and started talking. So we investigated a lot of different groups down there. One of the challenges of doing any kind of mission work like this is the fact that you really don't know how authentic the people are. These NGOs are, there's literally hundreds of them around the world, and trying to really figure out the ones that are really high quality, where the money and the time you spend with them is going to be utilized most effectively. It was a big concern of ours. So we spent a lot of time and did some mission trips down there and looked and investigated various groups. And of course, in my memory, I remember my trip down with my dad, so I checked out St. Boniface after not having connected with them in probably 20 years. And lo and behold, they had lasted all that time. They'd grown organically, and they seemed to really be doing things the right way. And so we got involved, and it's evolved from there. We've got involved with the CEO, Conor Shapiro. We now have one of our church members on the board of directors there, and we've really just kind of realized this is the place for us. We realized that, and we've been working with them ever since. So.
That's fascinating that your involvement goes back that far. I was not aware of that. And I think it is so important to people's comfort level when they're donating to know that somebody has vetted this, their money will go where it's needed. So that's great.
Yeah, and it's not just, it's, even though it's called the St. Boniface Haiti Foundation, HaitiHealth.org is the website. They're, it's fairly non-denominational, right? It's not, even though there was Catholic and Christian beginnings, it's really something we're trying to expand and make it something that communities and anybody who wants to help can get involved in. And they're really, they've been really great about that, accepting everybody who wants to participate and help them.
You mentioned earlier that any spiritual organization or school that would like to be involved is welcome.
Absolutely, yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that.
Okay, that's great. How did you get involved in this exciting mission?
When Jim brought this to our attention, the thing that we were looking for, and at the time it was a small group. It was our minister Max and Jim, myself, and Dave Melville. And as we were looking at groups, the thing that we were wrestling with is trying to identify a group that was making a real and lasting difference, right? Because one of the things that you've seen after the earthquake is literally billions and potentially tens of billions of dollars that have been funneled into Haiti to help the country recover from that earthquake. But then you go down and see continued devastation. In our first trip where we went down, it was probably 2 to 2.5 years after the earthquake, and the presidential palace, where the Congress would meet, essentially was still in ruins, and so there was so much devastation, and this really leads at some level to a sense of donor fatigue, that all this money is being funneled into Haiti, but is it really making a difference? So we took a pretty analytical approach to trying to understand organizations that were really focused on empowering the Haitians to lead their own way forward. And that's what we found with St. Boniface. The entire management team on the ground in Haiti are all Haitians. And so they're charting their own course and really driving a path forward, not only in healthcare, but in education, in economic development, in in agriculture, etc. And this is the thing that really struck us and caused us to conclude that this was of the many organizations that we looked at and thought about. This was the one organization that we felt really good about, was charting a path forward that would be sustainable. Sort of the old adage of, give a man a fish, you'll feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, he can feed himself for a lifetime. And that's what we found in St. Boniface.
That is very exciting. Can you cite examples of some progress that has actually been made at this point through the efforts of this group? From the time you first started going there, I don't mean back when you were in your 20s, I mean this period of time.
Yeah, well, we've seen, they, St. Boniface did get their share of the funds that came out of the earthquake. And as Barry mentioned, there's a lot of outreach and a lot of people that felt the need to want to give and help them. The devastation of the earthquake was certainly tremendous, but the challenge was a lot of those funds got raised, but they either never got to the people that actually needed them most because there's just no infrastructure. There's some corruption, not that that wasn't really the big issue. It's just getting those funds to the right places and then getting them with NGOs that would go and build something, as Barry said, that's sustainable. So there's so many places where funds would be raised, a building or a school or a hospital would be built, and it would lie empty because there's no recurring funds available to hire staff, to keep the building maintained, and to be able to get it to be fully utilized over time. Right?
And potentially it didn't even meet the needs of the community. So we saw on one of our trips, it's very common to see once or twice a week a market day where people come from literally dozens of miles away. Typically they walk, they're riding donkeys, and sort of the level of economic development is almost staggering. You see a motorized vehicle, it may be a motorcycle, there may be 3 or 4 people riding on a motorcycle. There's very few trucks or cars. Probably the best roads that we encounter in Haiti are amongst the worst roads that any of us have ever driven on in the United States. So it's a very rural, complicated place. But on market day, people will come from miles and miles away to sell fruit or whatever wares they have. And so we went through one town where there was this huge concrete structure created through very good wishes of some non-governmental organization, but it goes unused because it really doesn't meet the needs of the population. They didn't ask for it. It doesn't fit their style of commerce. So it's just a big white elephant. Millions of dollars, and it goes unused.
Makes you wonder, what were they thinking that a big white concrete structure would be of use?
People wanted to help,
Yeah.
and they didn't know how, and they thought that this was one way, but it really didn't involve the Haitian people, and this is something we need and would be beneficial to us. And again, this is what brings us back to St. Boniface, is it's totally driven by the needs of the community.
And when you think of the needs they do have, as we were chatting earlier, you mentioned that the average Haitian family, I don't remember the percentage, over 80% lives on $2 a day or less.
Yes.
The water supply is tainted, is that correct?
Yeah.
So diseases spread, basic sanitation is not there.
Yeah.
Children do not go to school.
Yeah, the
Is there any
sanitation.
personal anecdotes about these things?
Well, the sanitation thing is much more pronounced in Port-au-Prince in the city, but it's certainly true as well in the rural areas, where St. Boniface is a very rural area. But I'd actually like, if it's okay with you, would ask actually about things that St. Boniface has done that I've seen over the last couple of years. I just want to address that, and I'll go through some things. I don't want to get overly complicated, but it gives you an insight into the thought process they have, where they go through. They built the hospital, and they wanted to make sure that they could staff the hospital appropriately. They didn't want to bring people from the United States to go and move there and live there and provide. They want the Haitians to be able to be educated and deliver care. So they have scholarship, so they first started with elementary education. How do we get basic education in the community so we can have people come out of there and be staff workers or cleaners or whatever the roles might be in the hospital. But then also we need nurses, so let's start a scholarship program where they've actually sent Haitian men and women here to the United States to go to medical school, to go get properly trained, and then to come back and actually work at the hospital. So these are long-term, long-range kinds of investments that they've made to try to build that up. When the earthquake hit, another example, they had a bunch of Haitian people in the Haitian population with spinal cord injuries, which is understandable given the structures that are collapsing and everything. So they were asked by the U.S. government to actually start a spinal cord injury center which they did, and they expanded their hospital and campus to build a ward for that. They've done the same for women's health. They've done the same for neonatal health as well. And it's not just building the buildings. It's actually looking at ways to build a sustainable staff and sustain them. And they do say and ask for people to pay for the services, but most of the time it's given for free. So people come from tens of miles away and walk all day with their children to go and get medical care at the facility.
And then am I correct that you're also doing something about providing education for children?
One of the programs, and there's a few of them that we can talk about, that came out of our first visit was we thought it important to actually bring our kids with us. So on the first trip, there were three of us who went down from the church, and we brought our kids. And when they saw the situation, so let me give you a background. There's no public school system in Haiti. It's just one of the things that the government is just not able to provide. So when kids receive education, it's through the private schooling system. Many of them are church-run organizations, and but still, something like half of the kids that are school age do not go to school because they lack funds. And then there's a tremendous amount of drop-off along the way. So you reach a point that perhaps 1 or 2% of the kids actually graduate from high school. It's a tremendous financial burden on families. So, at the birth of a child, the family may buy a young goat and, raise that, raise some livestock, because it's primarily an agricultural type of economy, and then sell the goat so that they can pay for a kid to go to school. And it's not expensive proposition as we would think of it. On average, it's less than $200 a year for a kid to go to school, and that's their tuition to go to school. It's a good meal per day, which they might not get otherwise, uniform, books, etc. And so we started a program to support what St. Boniface is doing, sending kids to school. And last year, through our work, and it's primarily driven by the kids, raising money through their schools. One of the kids put on sort of a game show event right on that stage behind us at Dover Sherburne High School to raise money, and we were able to send 85 kids to school who otherwise would not be attending school. And out of approximately 700 kids that St. Boniface Haiti Foundation supports, that's a pretty big number. We want to expand that and do that more. So our kids continue to do programs to raise money. We're trying to expand it to other towns and other schools as well. So anybody, any high school, any middle school, any elementary school, kids that feel a passion for making a difference by raising $200, and that could be, putting on an event. It could be chore money for a month. It could be, on my birthday, instead of a gift, I ask you to donate to this group instead. $200 can make an enormous difference for a child in Haiti, and educating the Haiti population is so important, and it's such a core mission of the St. Boniface Haiti Foundation as well.
That's amazing. I love it that it's kids helping kids.
In fact, that's the name of it. It's called Kids for Timurin. Yeah, Timurin is Creole for kids. So.
And also the fact that with just a donation of $200, which most people probably would not miss too much, we send a kid to school for the whole year.
Yeah.
Including everything.
Plus a meal, plus a uniform,
please.
and supplies.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, I think you will have inspired a lot of people to want to donate to this cause. Anything else you'd like to say about your work there, the needs there, your personal experiences there?
Yeah, I just 2 points. One, just to expand on Barry's statement and bringing our kids down. It was real important for us to do that, and a lot of people think, ooh, bringing your kids to Haiti, isn't that dangerous? Aren't you worried about safety and those kinds of things? And the surprising thing is Haiti is actually a very safe place. It's a very poor place, which you can think poor and you think that there's a lot of chaos, and there is some. And when there's elections and when tragedy strikes, there's the same kinds of things that would happen in any country, including ours, when something like that happens. But by and large, it's a very safe place. And the things that really impacted me, so our kids were either high school or junior high school age to go, because I think that's the appropriate age to go down. That really impacted them, but it also impacts each one of us going down. And the things I remember most are that they have so little, yet they're so happy. And I look here and I look at what we do and the lives we lead. We're not nearly as happy as them. The other big thing was when I go there, and you go there and you meet somebody, you've never met them before, they're on the side of the road, they've got a big smile on their face, they may be thirsty, they'll give you everything they have. And they only have a couple of dollars, and they may only have, a drink they want you to have, right? So,
It's a really
yeah,
observation.
it's amazing. I mean, I think we all do that. We all walk, flew back and fly back and we're like, oh my goodness, how is that possible? Right? And I don't know if I know the answer, but I think it inspired me, and hopefully it inspired a few seeing this video that, maybe it's worth giving these people. It's so worth giving these people.
I mean, the reality is, even post-earthquake, with all the giving, when we talk about this group on the southern peninsula of Haiti, you start with Haiti being the poorest country by far in this peninsula, right? And so this region where we're supporting their work is the poorest of the poor. And they don't get as much government attention as the main city of Port-au-Prince or the more developed area of the north. So really, they only have themselves. And, it's a very community-oriented place. So, we would go out during the day or at night with our kids, and never a concern for safety, because the population really embraces the work of this foundation. It's made the lives of these people so much better than it would be otherwise. So they really embrace this organization because it means so much to them. It helps their kids live. It helps their wives and daughters survive, giving birth. They might not have otherwise. It's just incredibly meaningful, and it's incredibly touching for us to sort of see that. It definitely helps center you. We think of things that are important here, doing a good job at work, raising good kids, going to a Red Sox game, watching Downton Abbey. You get caught up in so much stuff that really is kind of trivial at the end of the day relative to life and death and family and love and helping each other and things that matter so much to these people that encounter and support.
So the only, for those watching, if you want more information, DoverChurch.org has a mission page that has an explanation of each of the things that we're doing. Kids for Tamoon, which is the Kids for Kids program. We as an organization, and we're trying to get expanded support of this. We're supporting a clinic called the Vila Clinic. So, Fond du Lac has a central hospital, St. Boniface Hospital. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to expand what they call their catchment area to be able to service and provide health care for an expanded population around the area. So they started this public school concept. The first one is this Vila village, which is about 10 miles away, and they've created a clinic there so they can support it centrally from the hospital. And they look to potentially add more of those over time. So we've taken it upon ourselves to get connected directly to Vila. We've been there several times. We've met with the community leaders. We're looking to expand that. So it's the second area. And the third area is really professional, help. All of us have professions. I have a technology background. There are many people in the medical community who could provide professional assistance or help with training or services for them as well. So those are three areas. And then HaitiHealth.org is the website of St. Boniface Haiti Foundation, which is the one group that, as I said, that's the partner we have.
Yeah, and Jim mentioned Vila, this mountain top village is 10 miles away. How many hours is that? So again, the roads are,
Roads in an ambulance. We're in an ambulance. The bench seats in the back, so that bounced around. That's where we spent most of our time probably, is in the back of the ambulance. Yeah. It bounced all over the place telling stories, which was actually kind of fun.
But Vila is so remote that in heavy rains or when hurricanes come through, it's completely inaccessible. In our ambulance, we're driving across rivers. The water's up to here, and so when the water rises, the community is completely cut off.
You must get a little nervous, don't you, when you're in this vehicle and
Staring over the edge of the cliff as you're rounding the corner.
facing your own mortality.
I think the first time you go, it's sort of a pretty big input of like, wow, look at this world that exists, right? As I said, as I leave, I remember the people, and then I just say, I better come back. But
You are going back in March of this year.
We're going back in just a couple of weeks, and we're already starting to plan a fall trip. We're going to people interested in attending supposed to do.
I'm sure you could use some donations right at this time to finance this trip and to be able to bring a lot to the people you visit.
Yeah,
So I'm sure our viewers will want to help out with this.
there's a few things that we're doing. I mean, so financially, we talked about Kids for Commune, supporting kids going to school. When Jim mentioned VILA, we supported in this fiscal year 100% of their non-staff operating expenses, so all of the supplies and medicines, which is about $50,000 a year for this clinic serving thousands and thousands of people who would not get care otherwise. So again, it's not a lot to help many, many people. And so, we want to commit to be able to do that every year. And we raised most of the money through members of the Dover Church last year, but we're constantly looking to expand. There are other remote clinics that St. Boniface would like to set up. They also run 20 weekend mobile clinics where they go around to communities where there's no infrastructure, with docs and nurses in the ambulance, and looking at kids, charting their weight gains, making sure they're getting adequate nutrition, etc. And to Jim's point, just through our own personal networks, but hopefully we reach even more people with this broadcast. There's people in the medical profession that may have surplus equipment or supplies that have been donated. There's many, many ways to help.
And how do you get those things there? Let's say a doctor or a hospital has some things to donate.
Yeah, I mean, to date, most of what we've done, which we take all the time, is supplies, right? So medical, simple things, aspirin, vitamins, gauze pads, simple medical supplies. We collect, go to Dover Church anytime and get the donations. And we typically, when we go down, we just take a little carry-on bag. We don't need much clothing, and we'll check 2 bags each of big suitcases full of these supplies, so we can bring them in. And we can get them through customs and get them out to the. So it is a little bit more convoluted and challenging to get larger pieces of equipment shipped down and shipped through the customs process. But St. Boniface has been doing this for a long time, so they've got some ideas. But if anyone's got interest, as we said, the Dover Church is always a place to look at. You can send an email to Beth at thedoverchurch.org, who can then forward the information to any of us to get followed up. So.
Okay, well, I think you're doing wonderful work, very exciting work. I think our viewers will get excited as well. Did everybody hear that information? Doverchurch.org or Beth at thedoverchurch.org to inquire about donating to this fabulous cause. $200 sends a child to school for a year, complete with uniform, food, tuition, etc. Clinics are going places where people have never had medical care. For $50,000 a year, they serve thousands of people. I can't think of a better cause to donate to. So I hope you'll all think about that. All churches and other spiritual organizations are welcome to participate. Youth in private or public schools outside of Dover, where the program is already in place. Love to have you join in. Thank you for watching. This is Linda Means.